thank you for being on stage. Congratulations for starting the IAB. We saw in my presentation, digital advertising is growing, but there's some kind of clouds on the horizon, economic and also kind of structurally. But what challenges are you seeing kind of as a region and from your company's perspective that you think an IAB and a community must address? Let's start with you.
I think, first of all, definitely data in general is what we need as a region. As you showed also the map, it looks really bad that we are not there. And not just because of the fact that we are not there, but also we really need comparable data. And right now, each market does something. Each market has different, maybe, methodology behind it. But we don't have a one particular way how to do it. And as most of you here are Latvians know, we also want to see how we are doing against Lithuanians and Estonians. So this data would give us that kind of chance to see where we stand. Also, regarding the region, of course, as you mentioned, COVID kind of shoot up all the digital for a couple of years for everyone. And right now we see that this is starting to stall, not just because of pandemic, but also the war and other things. So I believe that we are for quite a hard ride for the next year. And it would be really useful also to get this information from IAB, how in other markets clients are reacting, what are expectations, what needs to be done also for us to do the homework, what maybe advertisers are expecting from media, that we can approach and adjust as quickly as possible for us to see the bright future ahead.
Thanks, Ivar. From your perspective, is it similar?
Yeah, I would say we're on similar boat. So you showed those inflation numbers. So as I want to mention, like Estonia is number one. So we had 25% inflation. So those were baby numbers. We can do better. But the same sort of, we were just discussing behind the table about the same problems, being that we see the point of view where we are standing right now. We know that there seems to be some slowdown, but we don't have wide enough data to actually understand what's happening on the market. So you go around different agencies asking, so what does it look like from your point of view? Is there some slowdown, or they're promising I don't know, no, we were going to have a campaign, but we don't have efficient data to actually understand what's happening right now on this market. So I would say everybody's a bit in their corner. Everybody has small pieces of data, and all this data sharing is basically happening by humans asking other humans rather than just sharing and it being in this great pool where everybody can access it.
That's interesting. So it's like anecdotal fact-finding. You speak to people and saying, what are you thinking, what are you thinking? And everybody has to piece together the market in their own head.
Yeah, and then everybody, usually with the banana phone game where everybody's whispering. So by the time it's in the fifth person, everybody's just saying, no, the economy is going to collapse. But the first person said, a small decrease.
Yeah. I think that's a great point where kind of a survey really makes sense, and we see that in when the IAB in the UK and France puts out a press release. This is then the officially kind of authored version view of the world, right? This is where robust decisions are being made on. Of course, the data needs to be robust and accountable, and the trust will come over time. But it's something that creates the basis to avoid this banana phone, or it's just the researchers doing this banana phone, right? Trying to figure out what are you seeing, what are you saying. Gediminas, is it the same in all of the Baltics, and how do you see the situation?
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty the same in Lithuania as in Estonia and Latvia. And without research, as Ivar said and Liāna said as well, it's like self-proclaiming prophecy. You say that something is going to happen, everyone hears each other, and then something happens, not because of the data or the research or actual situation, but because someone said so. In general, I see a few obstacles now when the revenues are growing, but as your presentation also showed that social is growing in its percentage, meaning that growing revenue goes to not to the publishers, not to the media, but to the walled gardens. So me representing the media and the publishers, it's a problem for me, it's a challenge for me as well. But I suppose it boils down, everything, all these challenges and obstacles boils down to lack of education in the market. And the walled gardens are making use of that because they're big corporations, they can educate themselves, they have a lot of resources to do that, while our fragmented markets cannot. And this is where IAB comes with all their neutral position, neutral organization, providing some certification, knowledge, sharing experience, sharing proficiency, and this is how we can overcome this obstacle.
That's an interesting point where, like, say, the ad spend is not just one exercise, but it links to where do we need education, where do we need to kind of put more focus on in the market because maybe some formats or media are under and overperforming, just to calibrate things, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Another thing, what I wanted to mention also, it's good that we will be able to kind of work with you and get all the data, but I also think it's really important that all of us finally have a place where we can work together, because I don't know about Estonia and Lithuania, but Latvians definitely have a saying that the best meal for Latvian is another Latvian. And I believe that this is our chance and opportunity. And no matter how cheesy this might sound, but I do believe that this is the place where we can share what is bothering us, what kind of trends maybe are coming next year, what we can do to also encourage advertisers to spend more. And I'm not going to say all the things now, but I really do mean it that this is the place where we can finally do this. So yeah, definitely join us.
And to add to the education part, it's not only the people who are working in there, but I just was at our data protection agency organization in Estonia and trying to explain what's the difference between different cookies, and then you do a 20-minute speech discussing, and in the end you're just seeing government employees with blank eyesights and they're like listening. So that's what's happening, and you're like, yes, but it's fine. Look, and they're like, no, nothing. So it's not only education like everybody in the market, because I think most of the governments, they just regulate what's ever happening in advertising, but they're not actually getting what's actually happening in the advertising space, because most people, they don't have a background in advertising, they don't have a background in media. They're politicians, they're people who are legal, they're really good lawyers or really good people who know the legal side of everything, but I don't know, they don't understand what's actually happening.
And it's hard, right? We are an industry full of three-letter acronyms, and if you're not completely in the weeds of any of the latest supply chains or sub-segments of the market, we don't even have, as an industry, a common language to explain things. And I think so much kind of highly vertical and deep expertise now required. You know, you mentioned data and cookies. Last time I checked, there are like now over 100 ID providers out there. Which ones should a publisher choose? How are you currently navigating this topic?
Hardly. Yeah, there are too many ID providers, and this third-party cookie deprecation is a huge problem, but we're like good procrastinators and we're waiting for the finish. We're waiting for it to come. But you know,
No.
it's quite difficult to actually being in this market to understand what's happening. You're reading all the stuff around that you can get to, and you still cannot have a full picture of that. Maybe it's a problem that we're out of IB right now, and it will be a clearer picture. But when you start reading about the cookies, about data, about first-party data, zero-party data, whatever that is, second-party data, all these different acronyms, all these different namings, you get confused and you phase out at one point. And if you have to explain that to someone, it's another story.
And I think we're terrible with definitions in the industry, because typically we make definitions for our own company and for short-term commercial gain. And I think this is a key role of the IAB, to stand above all of this and to say, we are going to provide an industry workable definition for common understanding that we have this one language going on.
This is definitely a problem in the Baltics, because even when you're talking in the same country, it seems that you're talking with like people from the same yard, but still you have totally different definitions about the same stuff, like viewability, in-screen, overlay, some sort of different creatives, and you're talking about the same stuff, but still people don't understand each other. So standardization of the definitions is definitely a problem right now, and hopefully we can fix that.
And you all are representing, different companies and also different parts of the value chain. Do you think that the concerns of people are kind of aligned, or would an agency, a publisher, or an advertiser kind of need different things from an IAB?
I would say we're pretty much on the same sort of industry-wide, because both are on the luckier side of, I would say, all of whatever we're calling a cookie apocalypse, and everything has to be really dramatic, because apparently everybody's really creative, because cookie apocalypse. I mean, okay, cool. But I wanted to add that the best thing was if you're discussing with somebody about what the hell a WAS tag or WAS 3.0 and whatever those are, and then you even come to understand that all the people that work in media agencies, they don't know about IAB standards in our market. Most of the cases, they're just sending a video. I want to do video advertising, and then they're sending a code, and they're saying, I can do that version of that code, but I can't do that. And they are saying, what's a WAS? Fine,
yeah.
but that's also come down to we don't have these normalizations of all of those shortcomings, as you mentioned. But being a publisher, I would say that we are in a better place, I would say, than a lot of smaller players on the market, because we have first-party data. We have, as a group, we have. I don't remember the exact number, but I guess it was more than 150,000 different subscriptions, plus there might be more behind each subscription. So that means we have actually quite a nice collection of different first-party actual users willing to give us data. But yeah, it comes down to we have to do some sort of split what is advertisement, what is somebody's paying for. Are they paying and will they get less advertisements? How much data is being shared? Because yesterday I found out with the cookie policy in Germany, there's a new trend now. So they are having the same cookie policy pop up everywhere. And so if you say, no, I don't want cookies, you have to pay $4.99. So because they calculated a person's data to a year cost that much for us. So now if you don't want to accept cookies, you have to pay $4.99. And again, it's legally it's something. Let's see where that goes. But trying to go through all of these hoops and funnels, then you were just doing that. Now they had Corona, now you had the war, being really close to the border of Russia, then all of these additional war topics, how we should handle those, brand safety, all of those topics come rushing in rather quickly from our side.
Yeah, and you mentioned VAST, so video advertising standard, and others as well. And previously you mentioned also that it's so easy to buy on the platforms. And I think some companies are really good by removing friction, making things very easy. But I think what an IAB can do, and we see that is through standards, through best practices on other parts of the web, also remove that friction. But that, of course, requires something else, and that is education. I know some of you feel very passionate about that topic. It's not just about data, not just about standards, but also how can the next generation really use the tools that we have in the industry and do so in a best practice way. What was the value of education that an IAB can provide for you? Liāna, do you want to start?
I believe that education is something that probably all of us could gain, because as you mentioned, we all use sometimes even different standards talking to each other, or different abbreviations. And the one thing that kind of is also related to education. I really like the IAB's, you say if I say not correctly, but UK has this gold standard, I believe, which kind of gives standard for publishers that you don't have fake like users of your portal. You have minimum visibility for advertising, other things, brand safety, and you name it. And I believe that this is something that for me as a publisher, like representing a publisher, I would be happy if there would be some kind of a standard in our markets that first of all, advertisers know that their money is going somewhere that is a legit company, doesn't spread fake news, and also doesn't have 72 pop-up banners once you enter it. And I believe that this is something that all of us would benefit, because you asked previously like whether agencies and advertisers or publishers would have the same goals and same kind of needs from IAB. I think that's the beauty of it, because all of us have something maybe a bit different, but we all represent this market, and we all need this kind of a gathering and data and initiatives. And maybe for me, it's important to have these standards. For someone else, it's going to be something else. And that's why we are all here to discuss it. I don't want to talk too much so others can say something, but this is just as an example that would be something that I would really look forward to implement in our markets.
Yeah, in relation to the question whether different parties have the same goals in this organization, I would totally agree with Liāna that we have different goals, but it all goes down to a good market. So I think this is the most important thing to have. Whether we have different goals, standards, education, acronyms, data, whatever, we are still in the same market, and the market is growing in expertise by doing different initiatives. So yeah, in education, the first thing that we're going to do when this kick starts, my company will go through this ADAP certification of IAB. This is what I was dreaming and hoping for several years now, so definitely I'll send my guys to do that. Because yeah, I think education is important not only in publishing side, in media side, in agency side, but also advertisers. It's quite difficult to talk about programmatic deals, private marketplaces, viewability, active you name it, with a person who is not really understanding like what are you talking about.
Yeah, and we spend a lot of time kind of building explainer documents that are accessible to everybody, where you don't need to be the brand safety expert to understand it. It's not like a PhD thesis, which it often can feel like, because we need to disseminate this to the market. And I think you're going to create some interesting insights and reports, and of course, as part of the IB community, you all will going to have access to stuff that we have already done, and then we can build on that and create this common European market. And I very much look forward to that. Thank you so much for joining me. That was very insightful. And I can see some people are or were on their phones. Maybe there are some questions that they have.
Give me that. Yeah, we have a few questions. Oh, sorry. We have, some pretty nice questions. This first question is for Daniel. This was brought up during your talk. Is digital still eating traditional media share across Europe, or mostly increasing ad investments as such?
That's a very interesting question. We recently looked at that with a focus on retail media, right? It's a new channel. And we're thinking, and many publishers were concerned, is this cannibalizing my revenues? And we looked at it, hang on, there's so many different budget pools for that particular channel, and I'm going to come to the overall market in a second. Where in retail media now, we're going to see budgets from trade marketing, so the kind of analog shopper marketing, your promotions in the supermarket. We're seeing budgets from TV, we're seeing budgets from social, and we're also seeing incremental new budget coming in that wasn't there before. So many new budget sources. Overall in digital, we had several pools of growth. One is already, I mentioned, the era of cheap money, which has fueled kind of growth companies into the market. So that was net new money. We also did see some budget migration from other media. Of course, in the past it was mainly print, but we're seeing some from TV as well and other media. But usually there's a digital discount. So for each euro that goes from, let's say, TV to digital, maybe only around 80 cents runs up to in digital. The publisher then gets maybe 50% of that, as we know. But overall, yeah, it varies across countries. So in the UK, we're seeing migration from television. In Italy, we're seeing budgets coming in from other traditional media, from print in particular, and also advertisers that haven't been advertised, or companies that haven't advertised before. Small and medium-sized businesses, are putting money. They usually start with search and social, and then when they get more sophisticated, branch out into different areas. In Germany, we've seen the medium-sized enterprises, the privately owned companies, which make a vast majority of the economy, being kind of sleeping giants when it comes to digital advertising, completely analog, focused on their region, not having the skills, and required really years of education to kind of unlock those digital budgets. So bottom line, it depends on the market. It also depends on the media channel, but we're seeing both net new money and budget migration. And maybe the last word is, if we look at some kind of integrated media companies in TV, we're now seeing more budgets regardless of the channel. Whereas for the consumer, it doesn't matter whether it's an analog TV or whether it's IP delivery, where budgets don't discriminate anymore by the type of kind of delivery. Where that will in the future become more problematic is when it comes to measurement, as we're seeing a lot of push, in particular on broadcasters and other kind of traditional media companies, to change the way they measure and to provide more granular reporting. And I think here, addressable TV and also other kind of cross-stakeholder initiatives are going to be important.
Do you see that in the future that the definition of what is digital media will change as well? Because the lines are blurring. Out of home, we're talking about digital out of home. TV is technically digital, but now it's becoming, there's a lot of connected TV being used in certain markets. Is that also the case that just things are becoming digital, therefore budgets are increasing?
I think yes and no. In one sense, the term digital is going to become obsolete just by how delivery mechanisms are working. But then, of course, we're seeing that trading culture still vary a lot between different mediums, between different teams. I think, for instance, in TV, right? TV might be digital, but in some agencies, it's the television team doing it, and some it's the digital team, so it depends on what logo is on there. And also, worlds are still different, as I said, when it comes to measurement, when it comes to the granularity of data. So it's both a yes and no question, and I think we have to, as an industry, work better to produce better metrics, to produce better reporting, to not run into that trap of always kind of hardcore one-on-one addressability that's not privacy compliant. There was a period where the market did that. There, I think we can learn more from traditional media, but traditional media need to become more open to digital metrics and ways of doing measurement.
Cool, great. This question, I have to admit, I don't fully understand, but maybe you will. Do you do distribution analysis per media buyer, brackets, end client, not only on general level? For example, to know how the average buyer looks like, how big is the long tail, etc. I took that to mean, is there analysis of the people that are buying media? Who, like, if you're not shy, you can say out loud who asked this question.
Split between industries.
It's like
Yeah.
retail, how much spends, and
Yeah.
operators, how much they
Yeah.
spend.
Ah, okay.
That's
Yeah.
how
Yeah, we did that. Thank you. Now I understand.
Wasn't my question.
No, it's a very legitimate question. Whoever asked it, it's a great question, because we did that probably until 8 years ago, where we asked every IAB to kind of report the categories of spend. But then they were sending, their Nielsen data, their kind of ComScore data, their Kantar data. And of course, that was all not compatible across markets, because every market has a different definition of what is an FMCG, a CPG, or what's consumer electronics. It was very hard to piece together. And then we have the problem that a lot of ad spend was, of course, now coming from the long tail. from small companies. How do you classify them? Are they included in the reporting? With the thing that now with shipping costs going down and the Chinese domestic market not doing so well, a lot of Chinese buyers actually come into Europe to address the market. So it's actually very hard to kind of understand what category a company is from. So we have stopped doing that because we never collected the data ourselves, only got it from third parties. But what we are now doing is on the programmatic side to provide a standardized taxonomy. Right? Every SSP or DSP has a different way of reporting the data. When you put a company name into a DSP, it could be P and G, it could be P space G, it could be PG, it could be Procter and Gamble. For a publisher, as you know, extremely hard to decipher. Across publishers, very hard to decipher. So we're building this as kind of a graph system that tries to normalize the names, so at least we can give back to the industry, both from a buyer and from a seller perspective, a standardized taxonomy of who is who, so that each company can run their own spend or client analysis in a more efficient way.
Nice. I've been asked, I've just got a message coming saying, let's wrap up. Angry face. So before I say thank you to our panelists, what I'm going to say, there's a few questions that are left, specifically, I think, directed more about the IAB Baltics. What we'll do is that we'll reply in writing as a group so we can answer these questions so you have access to it. It's a little bit about how the membership works, what can we expect from the IAB Baltics, also about what we can expect from the ADEX in the future. So we'll give you more detailed information about this via email. I want to use this opportunity to say thank you to our three panelists and a special thank you to Daniel, who was chairing the panel, but also he did a fascinating presentation as well about data. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.